good, because then I'll recommence the meeting. Oh, thank you. I see the thumb up. Well done. Folk, welcome back for the afternoon session of the Risk Committee. Thank you, Jess, for arranging a lovely lunch. My task this afternoon is not to go to sleep, I think, actually, as a result. I wonder if we could keep ourselves moving along so that we can, yes, appropriately but reasonably quickly go through our agenda. So we're up to 6.7, which is legislative compliance. Ahmed and Mark, I think we're in your combined hands.
Thank you, Chair. So we are using the legal compliance quarterly report. Currently, the Council was using Comply With. The last survey was issued in early 2023 for the period covering from July 22 till June 23. This was reported to the committee last year. Out of this survey, the findings, there was 65 partial compliance. Out of the 65, 17 have been resolved. 2 items was in zero compliance. These 2 items was also resolved. So we are developing our risk maturity. So we are assessing the compliance process and tools used to ensure that we provide the best outcome in achieving using the available resources and reporting to the committee.
Thank you. Ahmed, do we have questions for Ahmed on the report? Yes, Janice.
So given that 48 of the 65 haven't been resolved and that there's not been another survey done and you're thinking about what to use, if not comply with, how are SLT currently assuring themselves that the regulations and all of that sort of thing are actually complied with?
Through the Chair, we're largely working on first principles at this stage, which relies on accessing the likes of Taituara, LGNZ and other bodies who monitor changes to legislation and report that either to a unit manager or to a group manager or chief executive level. But we found through this process that by and large it's critical for us to look at a reporting mechanism where actually we have a very high amount of confidence in what it's providing us. And I'm sure Comply With is a tool that does provide that to many councils just in our current environment, not to us, it would seem. So from that point of view, we're working on workarounds essentially in terms of our legislative compliance, and the major ones which are headline news, we don't seem to be missing in terms of our response to that. But as Ahmed has indicated, this does form part of a much larger deliberation around how we look at factors such as interoperability of computer systems and software programs, where we're not just impacting or delivering standalone systems, but are actually using the functionality of what we already have to deliver efficiently.
So can I follow up on that one, Janice? So look, I think what's critical, because I've raised this with you guys when we're doing our pre-meeting agenda, what's the sort of timeline and approach for the reassessment? No trouble with there being a reassessment, reflecting that our needs, if I can call it that, is clearly going to be that we are in a position with the, particularly, quite frankly, with the audit. This has not necessarily been driven by audit, but just wanting to do 2 things. One, that we as a committee can get assurance around legislative compliance, but 2, recognising when it comes to our audit, we will have to, and Nigel in particular, and 2 Nigels in particular will have to attest to being legislatively compliant. So have we got a program that'll get us there?
We're working on a documented program at the moment. It's not published at this stage. It does include, though, discussions with the Association of Local Government Information Managers, given that 14 councils are using the software as a service platform that we were using or have been using, so therefore the majority are not, and canvassing them for their approach in the first instance to legislative compliance.
About to make a joke that my question might have been convoluted. I need this, direct question, I need this by basically the end of the financial year. Will you do it?
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I need to know. It was a convoluted question, wasn't it? That's right, that's right. You can see I've got something that's psychologically scarred now. Right, if there's no other questions, can we move to the resolution which we receive and note the legislative compliance report? Seeing we've done the talking, it feels like you should move and I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Conflict of interest annual report, please.
To the Chair. This is the first conflict of interest annual report. This is based on the employee conflict of interest policy, which require the risk and assurance manager to report annually of any conflict that have high to medium risks to the council. For the period from 1st of July 23 till 31st of January 24, there was one conflict declared with medium risk relating to a tender process, where the person involved was recused from the meeting and discussion of the tender. Another activity, we are working to have a centralized employee interest register. So instead of having a separate register across the council, to have one register across the council, which is still in the planning stage. So we expect to have it test and roll out by the end of the year.
Thank you. Any questions? So it was just a good reflection for clarity on my. So this constitutes an annual report and it relates to employees' conflict of interests, correct?
Yeah.
You're seeking to give us an update
Yes,
on the events over
I'm sorry,
a year to 31 January, correct? And it relates solely to employees and not elected members.
I think this one was one of the elected members.
Yes, sorry. Let's just check. We have conflicts of interest management needed at an employee level and at a elected member level. Some different requirements around both. This is an annual report to 31 January 24 on both or just employees?
This will be on both of them. So this cover all conflict of interest recorded or declared for this period of time.
Yeah, so that includes employees and elected members. Brilliant. Okay, fine. And I think if I recall correctly, Jess, you've just circulated elected members, the updated, thank you, you've been on, hopefully it wasn't too tardy, but you've been on our cases to be updated, because of course it is relevant to an item, if I recall correctly, in John's management report. Michelle.
I was just going to ask, how do we capture the conflicts we don't know about? Or what do we do to provide assurance that all conflicts have been declared?
Are you thinking about that at both levels, or particularly at an employee? Or
probably both levels. Like, does somebody run through the company's office list and do a check randomly, or do we just, is it purely a trust model and you trust the employees and their correct conflicts or their correct interests? Sorry.
We're predominantly working on the trust model. We do some spot checks to the company's office, but by and large we take what is declared in the pecuniary interest register by and large. So that forms the basis of it.
I'm comfortable with that, Michelle. What I tend to find from my experience, particularly when I used to be an employee, the value of a periodic workshop, dare I say it, or sitting down with individual teams and explaining conflicts of interest because actually I think often, in my experience, because as a committee chair I've had to deal with some, omission tends to be by, if I can put it kindly, ignorance, not willfulness. So I think actually I'm comfortable with the trust model, Mark, as long as we are helping employees in particular understand. I think we would have a difference with elected members. We should have a high personal integrity meter on this one, that we do it. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Can we just move to the recommendation, which is that we receive the annual report? I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Okay, we have a debenture trust report. This was the other part to the annual audit program for, if I've got it correct, 2023, which is an obscure wee one, but an essential one for our debt, for maintaining our debt position. So, Andrea, it looks like you're about to tell us everything, please.
So this is an audit that was done at post-year-end audit. As far as I'm aware, there was no issues, but if John would like to comment, that would be great.
Rightio. John, anything that you need to add to what's in the written?
No, what's in the written papers covers it all.
Brilliant. That's great. Okay, any questions for John or for Andrea from folk? I suspect not. John, I don't want to underestimate the importance of this while we are dealing with this very quickly. It is actually an important part that we've got confidence from a debenture perspective that we're under control. Bearing in mind, of course, we're all with LGFA, so it does take away a wee bit of the issue. Okay, so the motion is that we receive the content. Receive the content in the, we just need to receive the Audit New Zealand report on the Venture Trust deed and note the unqualified opinion. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Nigel. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Sensitive expenditure. Andrea.
This is the second quarterly report. Essentially, there were no items identified of any significance.
Right, questions, please. Yes, Scott.
Thank you. Just if you could help me understand, please. I, of course, couldn't see anything standing out as being of any issue, but is there a standard or a policy around the value of, leaving gifts and the likes, and who makes that call?
Potentially.
The question, I didn't quite hear it.
Is there a standard or is there a policy around the value of leaving gifts on council credit cards? It's not a concern, just clarification. Because I see two different amounts here.
Won't that be in the rogue corporate management policy?
I feel like think for certain levels of service, so if you've been there for a significant time. Yeah.
So there is a policy around long service. In terms of leaving gifts, I will have to double check whether that is specifically included, but I do know there is a specific policy around buying gifts for staff around long service leave. There was work in development some time ago that was sitting with a different department that I can follow up and we can confirm.
Okay, any other questions, folk?
Yep.
Go for it.
I found this a weird little paper and wondered...
It's sort of damned with faint praise, isn't it?
Just wondered why it was here, because surely we have processes in place for approvals, etc. And I would, in most other organisations, internal audit would periodically go through and check the approval processes, etc., rather than it coming through in that degree of detail. And it's only credit cards, it's not all the other sensitive expenditure. It just struck me as a little weird.
Yep, agree. I think actually, what I would say, just to say, I would like to see a sensitive expenditure report. So if I don't know if I can just address that, Janice, what can we do today? Well, it's spent, but actually what is useful is for us just to be able to run our eye down it and check that actually this meets our sense, our check on what is appropriate spend. So really it comes back to your points, Scotty. What is our, our policy around leaving or contributions to the staff club, whatever it is, we should just check a chance just to check it out. However, this isn't all sensitive expenditure that I can think of. So I think again, if I could pick up Ahmed on the workshop, partly, and I must confess as chair, I was a wee bit short on my memory as to what we define sensitive expenditure and what guidance we give. I'm used to reasonably specific guidance. So for something like leaving gifts or gifts for long service, I'm used to seeing guidance for staff as to how much that is. And that also then meets your test, Janice, that actually perhaps we'd even see something by exception rather than anything else. But this is something, and again, I'm reflecting that we workshopped this morning. I think we just need to round back on this and tidy it up, because I don't think this is everything, but because it's just credit cards and credit cards are credit cards. But I'm interested in the sensitive expenditure test because it's for us, it's accountability and it's about ratepayer money being used. Pardon? Well, if it's only $1,900 and that's what we've spent, it's actually, dare I say it, an important accountability. I'm not again, by the way, sensitive expenditure. I don't expect zero, because actually we are an organisation, we have staff, we need to do things that are similar, but there's a level of perhaps tightening up the nature of the report that I think we could do on this one that just adds the information value and accountability. That's okay. Rightio.
I'd agree with that. I'm used to seeing travel on here and things like that.
Yeah. Yes, because I think you would see. I mean, for what it's worth, there are processes in place there. And again, perhaps just reflects that we're a wee bit far away. I don't know when. To be honest, I'm sure it's been within my lifetime here that we've reviewed the sensitive expenditure policy, but I just think this raises the questions that collectively we've got a wee bit of a gap here to understand this going forward. So look, I think we can deal with the business. I mean, there's not a lot there to trouble us, I don't think. I want to just check that with my colleagues, and I'm going to suggest that we actually adopt the report, but we also recognise an action point that we probably just need to have a broader discussion. Ahmed, I'm happy if you want to take this as an action point to talk to you about that. We can work this one through offline. Happy to do that. So are there any other questions then about, you've asked for clarification, you've got a clarification, Scott. Is there anything else that we need to talk about at this one? Okay, do I have a mover for the motion then, please? Thank you, Nigel. Seconder? Thank you, Scotty. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Your report, please.
Okay. Kia ora. The ESCA Procure to Pay project is underway and user testing is being performed with a planned go-live date for end of March 24. The Shira upgrade project went live on the 22nd of January and has transitioned into business as usual. The key features of the upgrade included improved user experience, new reporting, wellbeing section, a request for training feature, documentation module, and other improvements within the system. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. And I appreciate the short and form, particularly the project status report, which is really, really helpful. Folk have questions on this? Yes, sorry, Janice.
The ProMap, there only appeared to be one extra thing done. Is it because everyone was on holiday or there's really no enthusiasm for it?
There's been multiple, I think, contributions, one being that people were on leave and it was just a period. We are starting to roll out some more training and refresher sessions across the organisation, so we're hoping to get that mark up and people putting their entries into the program.
Yeah, cool. And I had a question about Magic, and I'm looking at that new dashboard you've put in place, and I wondered if you could explain why there's a delay to the schedule and how the commentary here lines up with some of the issues that were referred to in the long-term plan paper. Now, you won't be able to answer that bit perhaps, but yeah, is there a delay to the schedule and does that impact on the long-term plan?
There is a delay in the schedule with Magic as we had some staffing changes. We've now had a replacement and we've just had that person undergo some training. And so we're just busy doing some user testing on the different modules. There's about 3 to go and then we should be complete. We are aiming to go live with Magic towards June and hoping to give an update in the next commission and strategy meeting. In terms of the long-term plan, I think we're just going to revisit after we've done Magic and rolled it out and give training across the organisation, and then we'll just see how we're going to input that into the system.
So if it was working fully, it would have been easier for modelling of the long-term plan? I'm asking somebody, I don't know who.
Not as far as I'm aware. It was the initial stages. It was going to be used as an input tool for the unit managers to actually input the information, and then that information is essentially then exported into the model currently. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thanks. That will come. I am interested ultimately in picking that up when we get to the LTP report for, I think, the obvious reasons. Thank you, Sam. Can we go to the motion, please, which is that we receive the update report? I'll move that from the chair. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Nigel. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against is carried. Hello, long-term plan update. Hi. I presume it's Vinci, is that right? Vinci, I don't know whether we've met before. I'm sorry if I have. Bruce Robertson's my name.
Nice to meet you,
And
sir.
Janice Frederick, my fellow independent over here. I presume you know the rest
Good
in the room,
afternoon,
I
councillors.
suspect. So we're in your hands, Vinci.
Thank you. Through the chair. I will take the report as read. I'm here to give an update on the long-term plan. Apologies for not having been here at the last meeting. Basically, we have highlighted some of the key risks here. There are plans in place to address these. So I am here to give reassurance as much as I am to highlight some of the challenges we are facing. This isn't an easy long-term plan. We do have a range of issues, some of which you have actually highlighted, ma'am, with the Magic model. We've learned to pivot very quickly to get some working solutions around. But the issues, of course, remain inherent in the subject matter of our aging infrastructure, particularly around our water services, and with the legislative changes, what's required in order to get everything up to where we need it to be. A lot of dedicated resource has to go into that, which means that we have very little wiggle room, really, in this particular long-term plan between the commitments we've already made to the community and what we must do to meet legislative requirements, particularly in our water infrastructure. A lot of our decisions have kind of been made for us in regards to that. So I need to tell you that there are some things that this report was drafted before our last council meeting, so there are some changes, particularly around the questions for the consultation document. Also, we have an updated letter from Audit New Zealand. Thank you, John. We received that today. And in that letter, we have elected not to have our consultation document audited, and the rationale behind that is because it's not quite ready and we do not want to hold up Audit New Zealand's internal audit that they are doing in-house right now. The consultation document is not ready because we've had a change as to what the questions will be and what the focus of the consultation document will be. And through the generosity of the new chief executive, we now have internal resource dedicated to the long-term plan so that it's actually helping with capacity issues, so that you're not solely reliant on external support and you're building your in-house capacity. And a lot of this long-term plan is about preparing for the next one.
Question, can we choose not to have the consultation document audited?
Yes, ma'am, under new legislation.
Ever pay to get it audited?
It
Just
doesn't
we're not.
really, it's only for this particular year for the long-term plan because of the affordable waters reforms which have now changed. So they waived the need for the consultation. However, all the documentation supporting the consultation document still gets audited, as do our questions. So it was just to expedite so we didn't have to have the hot review until the very end of the LTP development.
For clarity, Janice, and John will correct me if I'm wrong, but in essence, the government recognised the challenges because of the decision around waters, and there are a range of options, even including a late runner, which is some councils are entertaining the idea of just doing an unaudited enhanced annual plan this year and delaying the LTP until next year for a 2-year LTP. But then there are some gradations. So we've adopted moving from a fully adopted audited CD and LTP to a unaudited CD, correct? That's what I'm hearing for the first time, Vinci, but we still have to have our LTP audited. And in the way that I understand it, it's still important from a timing perspective that John and the team have the chance to do the audit, as you quite rightly say, around all the supporting information, because they've still got to give an opinion on the LTP at the end. What they'll have to take into account is what we've consulted on, what comes out of the submission process as they finalise that view. We'll probably hear from John a wee bit in a couple of moments. So, so we've adopted that, okay, that's fine, and we're still going 30 June, right?
Yes, we are. We're looking at the 25th of June, which is the council meeting, and that's the deadline we're all working to.
Yep.
And I can tell you in our meeting with Audit New Zealand this morning, we were advised that really the CD itself takes about 2% of the time and effort for their auditing. It's all of the other information where the focus is.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, thank you for that, Vinci. So the papers, I mean, I've very much enjoyed the paper, and in fact, it actually raises a whole bunch of questions for me, but I'm not the LTP committee, so I'm not going to ask those questions here in the meeting, because I'm just intrigued looking at the numbers and what have you to see what's happening. But look, I might have questions outside of it. The critical question for us is actually the actual process and production of the LTP. So you're given two key insights there. One, the magic, and one, you've got the resourcing in a way that you're saying Nigel's upgraded the nature of our preparation, which is interesting. So in fact, do we have questions? And I would appreciate this particularly, sorry, this is not an exclusion of you or me, Janice, our elected members. This is about process. Are you comfortable with where we're at the moment? Understand where we're at. Nigel?
Look, I think the probably key one is elected members haven't had the opportunity to really delve into some of the policies that they would have liked to this point, but I think we've got to work around. But probably in that regard, we're probably late in having those discussions, and they would have been workshopped more last year in a perfect world. And that would probably be the main one, but jump in when you in a moment, elected members. But outside of that, we're also wary that it's draft until the communities had the opportunity to feed back, and we have too. So there's still an opportunity for us to feed into that process. So, but that would be my only critique. But outside of that, we've been very lucky. We've got good, passionate group of staff that have worked really hard on this and, you know, tried to catch us up.
It's comforting to hear, Nigel. And you said you've got to work around the policies. Any other comment folk would like to raise at this stage? No? Janice, have you got any questions?
But see, in the paper, it said that a risk was the amount or the level of capex and the fact that we hadn't done it before and that Audit New Zealand might not deem that we could. So are you going to use outsourcing as part of a solution for that?
Two key projects that take us above the standard level that, keeping in mind that we have increased our CapEx delivery dramatically over the last 2 terms of council. So if you took the stadium and the theatre/heritage centre out of the mix, it's almost BAU. So those 2 projects specifically, they're looking at external providers, contractors actually doing that, who have specified that they would likely bring resource from out of town because it's about impacting the local availability and stretching ourselves too thin. And also having some dedicated project management for a lot of those projects. So Audit have assured us that they will take into consideration as to where the resourcing is coming from when considering that large CapEx program.
So I'll just add to that. On the museum stadium, we have a design build, which is South Base. For the build, they will be going to the local market, but they have done the design build. They're managing the project along with our internal managers, and we believe that that one's more than doable. And you've got to remember our mix of CapEx is actually across 3 large sectors. One is water. So we've got plans already underway for the water with some bigger projects there. Roading is quite a large chunk as well, and that's more or less BAU. And the stadium and the museum are the other ones. So the stadium museum is nearly ready to go. We've just got to get to the final costing and final decision of council, and then we'll be kicking off. The stadium, we're going out to an expression of interest, and that will actually be following a similar line.
That raises for me more questions about what we're consulting on then, Nigel. What are we
exactly? So
you know, and I ask this. Can I be careful because I don't want to launch into trying to be, as I said, policy over your LTP or what you consult on is a legislative issue. Are we talking to the community on the right issues? When I read paragraph 14, it said the 3 issues that we're going to consult on. You're shaking your head already, Vince. This is not. I ignore this. I'm taking us down the rabbit hole.
This has changed.
Oh, okay, right.
So effectively, the consultation will be about our financial condition in terms of our rate levels, our fees and charges, and our cost profile. You know, have we got that mix right? And also the overall capital. Have we got the mix right? And over the next 10 years, we're going to spend 73% of our capex on roading and water, which is the thick end of 400 and something million. And have we then got that mix right, which turns itself up into debt level? Is the community comfortable with that level of debt?
Brilliant. That's because I mean, without being conscious and public, it looked like you were reopening the whole debate around do we or don't we do these things, and I didn't think that was what was the right. I didn't think that was the right.
No, that's
you got to make a statement here that totally obliterates this from the record, Nigel.
No, but I mean, we did kick it around a lot, and you know, to taking those community projects out, which is around 10% across that whole capital program of around 650. Not taking, there's still large projects, but on the scale of the capital program, they don't affect any really real rates reduction. So then we got to the point of what are we actually asking the community, and to make any changes to those, proposed rates, actually you'd have to pull, a couple of $100 million worth of capital program out, including key water, projects, including bridge renewals and all those, core council, everyday BAU sort of projects. So, there again, we went back to the question of what are we asking the public. So
Yeah.
that's been the challenge through this one. And in the past, it's all been, it's something people can see and they can, touch it almost. It's a stadium, it's a theatre, it's an art gallery and those sorts of things. But it is just very much a BAU. Here are the, the challenges ahead of us and how do we deliver that, so we don't become a Wellington Water and, in 2035. Yeah.
We're calling this the LTP of delivery, really, because it's what it's about, debt and delivery.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So look, just a question from me, if it's okay. So to come back to the item we talked about with Sam and now Vinci, the whole issue of actually modelling, and if I've picked this up correctly, we have, you might be the external consultant, somebody has got our model, correct?
Are you asking? Yes.
Paragraph 23, an external
Yes.
consultant in Christchurch for critical modelling analysis has, we've outsourced
He
it.
was our senior financial, one of the senior finance business partners here, and he was the one who knew magic the most. So when Sam was talking about, we had some personnel changes, we've held on to him for one day a week to help us with understanding magic, but he's the one who's pivoted into using the John Allett model, which we had used for the last LTP. Upon reflection, the year of an LTP is not the best time to introduce a new budgeting model. And to be fair, the magic suppliers had assured us that they could do all the patches needed and things like that. Didn't quite turn out that way. We're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We will keep magic. There's just more refinement, but for the LTP, we just need to crack on. So we are using the old model again.
So it just reflects, I mean, look, this is not any problem about who we're using, etc., but I'm making some assumption that we don't lose corporate knowledge over our model.
Exactly. So effectively, two people are externally consulting to us, both ex-employees. There was, due to recruitment, getting people in the various stages, they had to be retained on short-term contracts. So effectively, they're running those models. Andrew's got a plan to make sure that that comes in-house and we have more than one person covering it.
Great. It's the key thing is that, I mean, and again, I understand the contingencies or the exigency, whatever it is of the situation, Vinci. I just want to make certain that we've retained the knowledge ultimately of it. That's fine. Folk, that's great. Any other questions from anybody? You, Stacey.
I think this is just following on actually from Janice's point 25. I just wondered if you could explain to me just a little bit more where it says that if Audit were to decline that capital program, what happens there? I was sort of like, it sort of ended that sentence and I sort of couldn't figure out, well, what happens and what does that mean for the long-term plan? Like, what is the risk of that?
John, I'm going to hand over to you because I've never experienced where audits actually said there's no way you can do this. I'm aware of a qualified opinion, but it could be that they say you can't do it, you have to take something out. So, John?
Sorry, John, just before you
yes,
jump...
I'll answer that question.
Sorry, John, just before you jump in, like the capital program, we increased, I don't know, 2018-19 from averaging 30 mil or something like that. So we have been consistently been delivering, 56, 58, up to 70, I think, in those years. So it is my view, and I'm not putting words in, not telling the auditor what to say, but, my view is we do have the capability to, deliver along those lines. So, yeah, but I'll pass on to you. My apologies, John.
Thanks, Nigel. one council at least has been qualified on its program being undeliverable. The OAG, the Office of the Auditor General, has got guidance on how you look at whether the capital program can be achieved, and depending upon how much risk you assess with it, you can get to a qualification, or you can get to an emphasis of matter where the council discloses that there is some risk with the delivery of the program, and the audit report has an emphasis of matter paragraph where you draw the reader's attention to that uncertainty. So Timaru will definitely not be in the qualification territory. It's a question whether you might end up in the emphasis of matter paragraph. And as the mayor's highlighted, that his view is you won't. The team's just got to have a look at that.
I think, Stacey, the critical, you raise a really good point. I mean, if I was to go to an extreme, and again, John can correct me, but if we were to be qualified that that they can't reach the assurance that we would deliver, it would raise questions. Their report would in effect be raising a question: how reliable is this long term? If we're meant to be delivering 400 million. Well, let's say 100 million a year, and really we're resourced, we only show we do 50. Well, actually, we aren't telling the community truthfully what we can deliver, because we're going to be, I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, 50% shy every year, in which case, what does that mean for levels of service? What does that mean for the facilities we want to provide? Well, nothing, no, sorry. Look, it's a really good point. I tell you now, I don't want to sit around here if I know that we're going to be qualified in that sort of way, because actually it's saying we're producing something for the community which actually isn't worth the paper it's written on if it's qualified. It is a question of integrity, but actually technically we could take a qualification with still set rates and we'll still carry on. But it just raises questions about, and I think I want to come back to this is a question about our integrity of what do we put out in front of the public. And I almost want to say I don't really care about what John does, but I do, because he might put the spotlight on what we're not doing, and which is if we don't produce this with integrity, and if we don't have a plan to deliver the 100 or the 70 or the 120, what are we going out to the public for? It's not worth it.
So through you, Mr Chair, just to give you assurance, we have been through this CapEx probably 20 times.
I'd say so, yeah.
I have consistently tried to pull it down in terms of the level, and I've consistently been told it is deliverable and it is the right numbers. I think over the 10 years it will be, but there might be some timing issues between years.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest risk. I only have one number that worries the heck out of me, and that is our other operating costs, because we have pulled that back significantly, and we've got to get our dependency off consultants.
Just out of interest, to reference back to a previous conversation we've had, Nigel, we may need to set, and I don't want to over-egg the CapEx, that would be one a risk committee. In my experience, and I do it a number of places, we monitor delivery, not to overtake an infrastructure committee or something, but again, part of our financial strategy, part of our infrastructure strategy is delivery. It would be an area, but like you mentioned creditors or I mentioned debt, would be the sort of thing that a committee might monitor, but we can look at that as we go forward in our program. Okay, look, that's really useful. Thank you for that, Vincy. So that's comforting, more resource, that's great to hear. We have a plan now, things are firmed up in relationship to where we're going relative to an audit, etc. So look, I just wonder, Vincy, this engagement letter, which we were meant to be recommending be signed, can't be because it's been superseded, correct? Rightio, this morning. So look, John, I obviously would have invited you to speak to the actual letter itself, but I wonder, in light of the fact that we're not approving a engagement letter, whether there's anything more general you'd like to say about the LTP at this stage, please.
Well, say about the engagement letter, well, got the chance. All it does is some minor wording changes for where the CD is not audited. And there's just a couple of things that point out, well, we haven't been able to audit as efficiently as we would have liked up to this point because key information wasn't available when it was meant to be available. So but other than that, the letter is essentially the same as the original. So in terms of things that the committee should be aware of, Waka Kotahi funding is an issue. So most of you, if not all of you, would have caught up with the fact that the government said that the National Land Transport Fund is very short of money, far more wanting to be spent than is available to spend. And that's complicated because the government policy statement on roading is not likely to be out or finalised until late August. So we've got to look, as auditors, look at whether for a particular council, how significant Waka Kotahi funding is and what degree of risk there is for that particular council. So that may end up being an emphasis of matter paragraph drawing the attention to the uncertainty, but there's criteria about how that happens, and yeah, we're working with management on that. The other issue that came up in earlier discussions about climate change. So one of the councillors, sorry, I didn't recognise who it was at the time, question about whether there was enough actually happening. So when I read the water supply asset management plan and when I read the transport one, there's definite actions being taken to mitigate the risks with climate change. But the issue that I don't see there being done in any sort of comprehensive way is looking at retreat. Now that's common basically to all the councils I'm aware of. So you may move certain key infrastructure away from an area where sea level rise would get at, or where it's likely to be exposed to severe storm damage. But actually in terms of saying, well, we're not going to populate this area, we need to start moving away, then that does not seem to be covered, and that would be typical of other councils. I may have misread it, but that's my assessment at this stage.
Thank you, John. It raises a challenging question, your last statement. I don't know whether, I think that's more a principal debate I'd have outside of the committee meeting, I think. So, in essence, looking at your letter, the key thing that's changed is essentially around what is the scope of the work and presumably the audit logistics, and otherwise it's pretty much the same.
Yes.
So look, what I'd like to recommend is that we need to change 1A, and it's a bit like what we did previously with the arrangements letter for the annual audit. I wonder if the committee would be prepared to accept this quick change, which is that I'm delegated the capacity to recommend the Mayor signs the letter of engagement. Just means we can clear that one out and clarify one or two things. Is that okay? Thank you. If you move that. Good, because you're also going to move in 1B as well, but I think we are too. Do I have a seconder, please? I've got Janice, and thank you, Nigel. Any discussion on the motions? I changed that one on the fly, sorry, but I hope that's okay, Jess. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, John. Now, there's no consideration of urgent business. I have none, which gets me then to the procedural motion to go into to exclude the public. We have those there and the reasons why. I'm comfortable to move the motion. Thank you, Nigel. Is there any discussion on that motion? We're comfortable? Great. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. we just wait a couple of minutes while we turn off.